Stranger Things has officially come to an end, but this story will live on forever. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. I am breaking down the Stranger Things Season 5 finale today, the final episode of this show ever. I have a full reaction linked up above where I got pretty emotional. I broke down many times, I'll say it. No shame on my part. It was the end of an era, a show I had grown up watching. I grew up with this show, and it ripped my heart out in the end in the best ways. Bittersweet would be a word I would use to describe it, but it really hit for me, and I just kind of sat there in silence, tearing up and crying as the credits rolled, reminiscing on the wonderful show this was. And I adore this episode, it goes without saying. So of course I'm going to get down to the nitty-gritty of it all, breaking down all the details frame by frame as I do with Volume 1 and Volume 2 and all the other trailers, and I can't wait to do it here one last time for the finale. Before I get into this, hit that like button, comment down below your thoughts on the series finale of Stranger Things, and if you want to watch my full reaction, you can do that on Patreon, meaning there will be a timer in the corner and you guys can actually pull up the episode on Netflix and sync up with me. It'll be like we're watching the episode together. It's a fun thing. A lot of people have said they've enjoyed doing that so far, but I don't have much else to report outside of the finale, and I'm ready to get down to business one last time. So the episode opens with a shot of the stars in the night sky, and we actually pan down to reveal the gate in the Max Z, but I instantly recognized a very familiar audio track, as if you listen closely, the ambient sounds that play in the background are nearly identical to the background noise heard in the opening shot of the very first episode of the show, The Vanishing of Will Byers. In that episode, obviously, we open with the night sky and then reveal Hawkins' lab. Here, it's the Max Z gate, but still very similar audio. Dr. K and the military are shown plotting to make their way into the gate, following our crew, as we then see the Bradley's Big Buy truck arrive at Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down. Eleven and Mike have what felt like a final exchange between them that really set the tone of Eleven might not make it out this time. There's a great quote where Mike says, "One last fight and this whole nightmare will be over." Mike and Elle then share what seems like one final embrace in the moment, and Eleven, alongside Murray, Collie, and Hopper, makes her way into Hawkins' lab, and she's carrying herself as though she knows what she must do. She has this look about herself where she's like, these are my final hours. I know what I have to do to save everyone. Now, one of the coolest shots of the season then takes place. We actually get to see the kids and Vecna all locked into the hive mind, then slowly make our way through the abyss and through a gate, revealing the rifts far down below in the Upside Down. This was cinema. I mean, it was such a well-shot scene that showcased just the scale and almost how the bridge works in relation to Hawkins as well as the abyss. It was so incredibly cool. And then we got a unique opening title card. The main intro played, but it was different this time around because there were no names of actors. It was just the Season 5 logo taking form. And when I saw this, I immediately wondered what it meant for the end credits, because that meant we're probably getting some sort of movie-like end credits where each character gets their moment to shine and we see a name attached to it. And what they ended up doing with it was beautiful and, again, exceeded my expectations. I was sitting there weeping like Timothy Chalamet at the end of Call Me By Your Name. It was really something else. Now we pick up with Mr. Clark and Erica having a fun little exchange, and this kind of assured to me they're both going to get out alive. And hey, we've all had situations where you feel like we need to cuss, especially when you're driving on a highway. While in the Upside Down, our group of Jonathan, Steve, Nancy, Mike, Will, Lucas, and Robin head up the radio tower, while Vicky is posted up at the WSQK radio station in the right side up with Max. And in Hawkins' lab, of course, Hopper and Elle find the bath from Elle's time with Brenner, making for one hell of a Season 1 callback. She's of course going to head into the void, and being at the bath in Hawkins' lab is a must because of its close proximity to where Vecna is posted up in the abyss. She wants to be able to enter his mind, she's got to be close to him. Hopper and Elle then have a plan for when she's in the void, where 2 slow knocks mean the abyss has started to move, and 3 fast knocks means to kill Henry fast, as they believe this will cause the abyss to stop moving toward Hawkins. Again, just like with the Mike and Eleven hug scene, this little exchange between Hopper and Elle felt final in a sense, and almost hinted at this impending doom that was inevitable. As our group of characters make their way up the radio tower, Mike and Will have a sweet chat where they basically reaffirm that they're still friends, in fact, best friends, and there was never a doubt. They've always been best buds from the beginning. Now, I was tripping out when Max stood up out of the wheelchair initially, because back at the radio station, she gets up, and I was like, does Vecna have her in a trance? What is she actually doing? Is she walking around for real? But it turns out she enters the void by way of Eleven and Collie in order to assist them in traveling through Henry's memories, as she certainly has her experiences from from her time in Camazotz. She knows her way around Henry's mind. The Abyss begins to descend upon the Upside Down, heading towards Hawkins on path to merge into one. We see Max, Kali, and Elle all in the void inside of Eleven's mind, where they're then able to enter the memories of Henry as they see him in the Abyss and Eleven touches him. This instantly transports them to a memory from Hawkins High School back in 1959 that's hinted at earlier when Max is walking through a bunch of his memories. That's where we see young Joyce and we see the Oklahoma playbill. We'll hear Max is guiding the way through this old school Hawkins High. And en route, Eleven actually asks if that was Joyce, to which Max responds yes, and then there's some funny nods to Hopper being a rebel and Ted and Karen getting touchy at school. Of course, all these characters are shown in Stranger Things: The First Shadow, which is the stage play spin-off of Stranger Things that focuses on a young Henry Creel. It's a prequel that is technically canon to this show. I don't know when that will be made accessible to Netflix, if ever, but it is playing in New York on Broadway right now. Elsewhere, Dr. K pulls up on Vicky and Max at the radio station, and Vicky's able to hide them in the little hidden room that goes back down to the basement of the WSQK radio station, but not for long. Because time's running out. The tip of the radio tower is not lined up with the rift, and so Max and company pull up on this stage at Hawkins High, and they actually find a way to enter Camazotz, as it presumably correlates to one of Henry's memories. So Max is able to find a doorway based on the fact that she's gone through these memories a million times, seemingly. And they end up in Camazotz in the Creel house, where all of the kids in Vecna are around this table locked in, as we saw them at the end of the penultimate episode, The Bridge. And the theater performance that we see them at in Hawkins High School is genuinely unsettling. It's demonic. It was giving off cult vibes. I don't know what it was, but it was wild. And right when they pull up, Eleven launches Henry out of the window. I mean, this automatically causes a disruption of the merging of worlds, which helps out our buddies that are on the top of the radio tower, because for a second there, everyone on the top of that tower is about to be crushed like they were in the OG Star Wars in the trash compactor. What? Now, the tower does make contact with the terrain of the Abyss, as it didn't end up lining up perfectly with the rift, and this causes Steve, of all people, to go flying, holding on for dear life. And if there's one thing this show and the Duffer Brothers are going to do, it is tease the death of Steve. They love it. They almost have a thing for it. I remember in Season 4, Episode 6, The Dive, the episode ends with him having gone through the gate at the bottom of Lover's Lake. He's tied up around the neck by demobats, he's getting bit to pieces, and they're like, this is it, Steve might be cooked. Well, I'd say this is the biggest offense of almost killing Steve. He falls off this tower and is holding on with one hand for dear life, where he then slips and falls, and there's like a 6-second long cut to black. It was uncomfortably long, but Steve is saved by none other than Jonathan. Oh, how far they've come. I thought this was a wonderful moment for the two of them, and kind of opened the door to a sweet conversation they have later on in the episode. But just the relief in Dustin's eyes when he embraces Steve and they're both safe hit, because we could not witness Dustin lose yet another older brother. He already went through that with Eddie. My whole thing leading up to this episode was they can't get too repetitive with plot points. That might be too repetitive, and so I'm glad they're both alive, and obviously we'll talk about where their characters end up, but they get to ride off into the sunset and be best friends forever, and I think that's the most fitting conclusion for both Dustin and Steve. Considering they all made it out of this dangerous situation, they are right near one of those rifts, and they're able to enter the Abyss, setting the stage for one epic final showdown. Over in Camazotz, Max rallies all the kids, and Kali actually messes with Henry, hiding all the kids from Henry with her own powers, and as means of retaliation, Henry's kind of pissed off about this. He starts to play mind games with Elle and discovers, oh, you're working with Kali and she's here right now. So Kali runs to kill him, like literally stab Henry, but he disappears. Where is he retreated to? Only time will tell. Back in the Abyss, Steve and Jonathan then have a bit of a heart-to-heart as they talk about their past relationships with Nancy and also just the current state of their relationship. It's kind of a long-awaited moment between the two of these. They've rarely had actual conversations. They're usually butting heads, competing, or literally fighting in an alleyway throughout the show. Since Jonathan saves Steve and they have this conversation, it's kind of a course correct where they're actually set down the path to friendship, which is a beautiful thing. Who would have thought back in Season 1 when Jonathan's beating the crap out of him in the alley? There's even an acknowledgement from Steve where he's like, yeah, I can be a bit of a prick. I laughed.
Can be a real prick sometimes.
And then we get one of my favorite music cues in the entire season. There's a bit of a callback to Soldiers. It's not for long, but I was hyped. I literally almost jumped out of my seat in the reaction. I was like, we're going Soldiers, baby. It's an iconic track from Season 2, and we see the gang approaching what at the time we believed to be just the lair where Vecna was posted up with all the kids on the spire, but now we know it's actually the Mind Flayer itself. More on that later. Now in the woods of Camazotz, Max and Holly are guiding the kids to the cave system, as that's where they're safe from Henry. But Elle and Kali meet up with them as well, and this does not last long. But back at Hawkins' lab, we get an emotional scene with Harbour, my favorite character in the show, mind you. Vecna's retreated there to play mind games on Harbour. He starts by showing him some drums of Agent Orange. Of course, this is a toxic herbicide, which Harbour actually stirred up in the Vietnam War, and we hear him reference this in season 4 with his monologue at the Russian prison.
I'm mixing up these 55-gallon drums of Agent Orange, inhaling this stuff.
This is what directly led to his daughter Sarah getting cancer at a young age and passing away tragically. And so Harbour's carried this guilt his whole life. He airs this out to Dmitri in the Russian prison, and he, talks about how he feels like he's responsible, he blames himself. And Vecna is preying on that trauma. We actually get to see a young Sarah, Harbour's daughter, and she tells Harbour, "You knew this would happen just like you know what will happen to her." And this leads to a previous conversation between Kali and Elle, where Kali suggests they will go out with the bridge, or the Upside Down. Then Vecna drops a diabolical line. He says, "One daughter dead because of you and soon another." He goes on to call Harbour the Curse, which is directly a callback to that monologue from Russia in season 4.
I am the curse.
So Vecna is fully in his mind right now, and he crossed the line. Of course, as a result of this, Harbour shoots at what he believes to be Vecna, but it appears as though he shot and killed 11 inside the bath, causing him to smash the glass open, which of course results in Elle, Kali, and Max all vanishing from Camazotz, leaving Holly on her own, and really turning their plan upside down. But Vecna's mind games caused this whole thing. We do get a great moment where it's up to Holly to assume this role of a leader. She becomes the wheeler she was always meant to be. Felt like a hybrid of Nancy and Max in this moment. I was like, hell yeah, Holly. I ended up loving this character throughout the season. So they kind of got to figure out plan B, and 11 tells Kali they have to get to the Abyss, join the others, and kill Henry there. Kali, of course, responds there's no time for this, but Elle thinks that if the kids make it to the cave in Camazotz, they'll have time, because Henry needs the kids to enact his plan. This is all what Dustin has told them, at least. So Harbour confronts Elle about his revelation that was made because of Vecna's vision, where he's like, your plan is to kill yourself in this final mission, isn't it? Tell me, admit it. And Harbour refuses to detonate the C4 until 11 is back safe. Kali, however, pulls a gun on Harbour. Wild move. This leads to Harbour giving Elle a bit of a motivational speech, gives me chills thinking about it. He's basically like, you don't think you deserve or can ever have this life after the dust settles, but you don't know that. Fight like hell one last time. Make it real. A life after everything. You deserve it. It's a beautiful moment where it's a father uplifting a daughter, and it's all interrupted by the military and Lieutenant Akers pulling up at Hawkins' lab, but still in the moment I was like, this is special. This is special. I'm probably gonna cry later, and I did. Back with Holly and the kids, Derek actually falls a bit behind, but Holly goes back to save him because she's a wheeler, and Henry starts to run after them to the point where he lunges his arm forward and tries to grab Holly, but she's able to evade him. And it was hilarious seeing Derek's response. We got a classic Derek line, and he's talking to Henry here. It was awesome. So the kids are safe in the caves, or at least they think they are. In the Abyss, we continue to get some classic Stranger Things exchanges as Mike asks for a gun from Nancy and she just gives him a flare gun. Lucas kind of makes a fun joke about this. All the while, Will taps into the hive mind and he actually sees through the eyes of Henry as Henry approaches the cave. This, of course, opens the door for Will to be able to see through Henry as Henry relives his most traumatic memory, allowing for Will to relay all this information to his friends about the big plot twist. Despite his clear trauma, Henry pushes through and enters the cave, so Holly has to take the kids out into the desert of Camazotz, where they ultimately end up in that cave system we saw her and Max in, where we have the young Henry memory, setting up how big of a role that's going to play. I just want to take a second to shout out Jamie Campbell Bower's performance. Just from the physicality alone, it might be the best of the season. He is doing like Jack Nicholson in the Shining levels of evil, and he's just on another level with the facial expressions. It gave me chills and the goosies many times. Now back with the military at Hawkins' lab, they've utilized the kryptonite to disable Elle and Kali, taking everyone captive in a room, and Murray's just tripping out on the roof with some C4, and there's a helicopter out there, so I was like, I wonder if he's gonna just jump at the helicopter and end it all right now. He didn't. He threw the C4 at the helicopter, still blew it up, but I was like, is he going down with the ship? There were like 5 times in this episode where I was like, this is it for Murray. R.I.P. Murray. He ended up making it out alive, spoiler alert, but I really thought he was a goner time and time again. And honestly, I think they could have killed him. It wouldn't have changed anything really. Like, I thought Murray was delightful, but in the end, it's not like he has some grand finale or conclusion. Killing him in that moment would not have changed anything. You know, the loss would have been more felt, that's all. But because of Murray blowing up this helicopter, it allows for a moment of Elle to escape, then take out all these military guys, including Lieutenant Akers. And her kill of Lieutenant Akers was sick. She uses her powers and forces him to shoot himself. Like, it was a gnarly scene, but it was pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. One of the coolest moments with her powers in the show. And that guy deserved it. What a scumbag. In all the chaos, though, Kali does get shot in the stomach and bleeds out and dies. She's a big death pretty early on in the show, so it's evident now that the Duffers brought Kali back for 11, for her character arc, for her journey, and that's kind of what Kali always was. It was never about Kali and her own individual journey. They touched on that a little bit here in her traumatic backstory, but it was always more Kali, how that sisterhood relationship can impact 11 and her journey. Her final lines are, "My story was always going to end here," a line that in the moment was great, as if Kali knew her fate all along, but with the context of the epilogue, it hits even harder. But we're back in that cave system or tunnel where Holly and all the kids are trying to escape Camazotz again, and Henry himself has arrived on the scene and is going to have to relive this moment. But we have to remember Will can see through him. That's going to play a huge role. Back at Hawkins' lab on the rooftop, Hopper and 11 have what definitively feels like a final goodbye. 11 basically recounts to Hopper how he changed her life. I mean, the waterworks got going for me. I love that relationship. I always have. And the scene just broke me. I love the father-daughter duo that is Hopper and Elle. Their journey from season 2 onward has been special to see. And there's one line in particular that really got me. It's when 11 tells Hopper, "I'm not a kid anymore and I'm not Sarah." 11 then hands Hopper a familiar bracelet, that of course being the blue hair tie that was Sarah's. Hopper used to wear it on his wrist to remember his late daughter, but he ultimately did give it to 11 in season 2. It was just off screen. And the first time we see her wear it is at the snowball at the end of season 2. But her giving that back to him really kind of signified this is it. That is kind of a signal, hey, 11's going. Back in the cave system, a huge revelation is made as Henry watches his old self, his old memory, open that briefcase that we saw in episode 7, The Bridge. And he encounters a piece of what looks like the Abyss or the Mind Flayer. I couldn't tell exactly what it is, but he has a vision immediately where he sees these cloud-like particles in the sky of the Abyss telling him to find me. The particles on that little stone or piece of the Mind Flayer that he's holding then enter his bloodstream and cause him to drop to his knees. It's clear he's been corrupted by this evil. And it's also worth noting that that cloud-like formation is what we see when Henry arrives in Dimension X, or the Abyss, I should say, post the massacre at Hawkins' lab. It's interesting with all this added context. The man in the cave who Henry had hit with the rock says, "You must resist it. It will consume you. It will consume you all." I imagine this is a worker from Brenner's lab who stole lab equipment. That is alluded to in the first Shadow play, as Henry ran into this guy in the cave system. In the play, apparently, again, I've only read the spoiler synopsis. I haven't seen it in person, so let me know what you think you've seen the play. But in response to this guy's comments, Henry sees a flash of the Mind Flayer in the sky real quick, and Henry kills this guy with his newfound powers. In this moment, it is made known that the Mind Flayer had essentially become a part of Henry. Now, we have to remember Will's been witnessing all of this go down. Of course, via the hive mind connection, he's seeing through Henry's eyes. And he's able to have a mental conversation with Henry. He tells Henry it was never you. That's why the Mind Flayer didn't want you in the cave. It didn't want you to remember. This is, of course, referring to Henry's inability to enter the cave system in Camazotz, as it seems the Mind Flayer, or at least part of it, was within Henry, preventing him from going in. In a sense, the Mind Flayer is kind of like the ring from Lord of the Rings, as it corrupts those who wear it. The Mind Flayer corrupted Henry, but it still made clear that Henry had the choice to not give in, and he chose to embrace this. He wanted the darkness to overtake him. Will goes on to say, "It used you to bring it here. You're just like me, Henry, a vessel." Henry follows up by saying, "It showed me the truth, that this world is broken, that man is broken. It has never controlled me, and I never controlled it. I could have resisted it, but I chose to join it." So this kind of implies that the Mind Flayer needed Henry in order to reach its full powers and potential, and Henry himself felt empowered by the presence of the Mind Flayer within him. It strengthened both individuals, and while Henry could have resisted, he liked the power and joined it. So while at one point in time there was undeniably some humanity and goodness inside of Henry Creel, because humans aren't naturally evil, all that's lost now, and he's fully gone, as he gave into the Mind Flayer and the evil forces that be. And this line spoken by Henry sums it all up and is one of the best bars in Stranger Things, one of the hardest lines in the show. "It needs me, and I need it. We are one." That's a mic drop line right there. Again, I haven't seen the first Shadow play yet, but I'm aware it adds a lot of depth to Henry's backstory, so I imagine if you've seen that full play, this moment hits even harder. Simultaneously, over in the Abyss, this structure where Vecna and all the kids are posted up unravels to reveal the physical form of the Mind Flayer itself. You want to talk about cinematic experiences? I've never seen anything of this scale on television before, and I've seen all of Game of Thrones. It was out of this world. The gang tries to evade the Mind Flayer, but really it seems like they're toast as its mouth is opening overhead. The gaping mouth, mind you, that Nancy saw in her vision at the end of season 4 when Vecna put her in a trance.
This giant creature with a gaping mouth.
But the Mind Flayer takes a hit from some rocks and reveals that 11 successfully made her way into the abyss. Earlier in a scene, she said she could jump up on the rocks like how she had trained all season to jump from boulder to boulder into the gate. And this power ability of hers has been shown all season, so this was not out of the blue or unexpected. She finally is able to use that, and she pulls up on the Mind Flayer, giving us one of the coolest shots in the show, and it's not even up for debate. Hang it in the Louvre, as they say. I got full body chills when we saw this shot. It's also very reminiscent of the shot of Billy dying at the hands of the physical Mind Flayer in season 3 that consists of all the flayed. But this fight between Elle and the Mind Flayer and then Vecna is sick. Elle breaks through the Mind Flayer, taking Vecna down from his connection and fighting him 1v1. So the rest of the gang realizes they can actually help out by inflicting damage to the Mind Flayer, in turn having an impact on Vecna and assisting 11 in defeating him. As they plan to head up to the cliff and lure the Mind Flayer into the canyon, they realize that someone has to serve as bait. And who volunteers? Nancy. Now, I really thought she was a goner in this moment. There was a lot of evidence leading up to this finale that Nancy could die, notably that Jonathan and Nancy split off or break up, but on top of that, she had like a final moment with Harbour, a final moment with Dustin. These were in episode 7. I was like, they're giving her a lot of not random but unexpected moments with side characters. Is she a goner? And they really teed her up to die here. Thankfully, she did not. Nancy lures the Mind Flayer to the canyon, though, and she's about to get got. But Jonathan pulls up with the flamethrower, Robin's got a Molotov cocktail, and they all go in on the Mind Flayer, working together as a team one last time. Lucas got a big-ass slingshot. We love to see it. He's killed it with a slingshot since season 1. Mike shoots at this thing with a flare gun. It's all hands on deck. Even Steve and Dustin go underneath this thing with their spears and start stabbing what almost look like egg sacs. And Dustin says, "This is for Eddie, you son of a bitch," while Steve yells for Eddie as well. I was hyped, guys, because before it happened when I was watching it live, I said, "For Eddie," and then they did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It also kind of parallels how Eddie says, "Chrissy, this is for you," right before he shreds the guitar with Master of Puppets. It was just an awesome little moment. Now, because of the hive mind being weakened, Eleven's actually able to gain the upper hand on Vecna, slowly sending him back towards this spike in the Mind Flayer that begins to stab him through the back. But Vecna does get a bit of a burst of energy. He's able to fight back against 11 as he extends his arm out, looking like he's about to Vecna her. And this is where Will the Wise himself, the sorcerer, taps into the hive mind and takes control over Vecna. It's just for a brief moment, though, like he did in episode 5 when he rescued Max from Vecna's grip in Shock Jock. But Will has a great line. He says, "I'm not afraid anymore. We're not afraid anymore." He then snaps off Vecna's arm, and this gives Elle just enough time to use her full force and impale Vecna on this spike. Of course, this, paired with the damage done to the Mind Flayer by the rest of our characters, results in the Mind Flayer collapsing to the ground. It's epic as hell. But here's one quick question for you, and I want your thoughts in the comments. When Will tapped into Vecna via the hive mind, was he experiencing any pain, as we know the Mind Flayer and Vecna were being damaged? Was he able to push through? It was only like 5 to 10 seconds long. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And you know, as I sit here talking through this, maybe it is the fact that he's not afraid. All of his secrets are out. There's nothing Vecna can really prey on him with, as he is fully himself and accepts himself, and all his friends know who he is deep down. But as Vecna is severely wounded and the Mind Flayer's out of commission, Nancy's able to rescue Holly from the spires, and we see those particles of the hive mind escape her mouth. Mike and Nancy then hug Holly, and it's such a sweet sibling moment, and I just got like chills thinking about it. It's also a visual parallel to when Will is rescued by Hopper and Joyce in the season 1 finale. My heart was full. Steve rescues Derek, and they have a bit of a hug, and this just goes to show Steve's love for kids, and that, of course, is where Steve ends up in the epilogue. This is hinting at that. But as all the kids are freed and our characters make their way around Vecna, he's struggling, he's gasping for air, and Joyce drops the hardest line of the entire show, bar none. This just was so Ripley from Aliens. I was like, this is badass. Winona, let's go, Winona. She then begins to chop his head off with her iconic axe, as every character looks on and reminisces on the people in their lives they've lost or that have suffered at the hands of the Mind Flayer, Vecna, any of this crap. It was a really powerful moment with the score, but also just remembering those who have passed or endured this suffering for years now. And after a couple hits with the axe, Vecna is beheaded. He's done. We can wipe our hands of him. Now, what's crazy about this scene in Vecna's Vecna's death and the manner in which he was killed, it was kind of right in front of us for years now. In fact, in season 4, episode 6, The Dive, there's a moment where a lot of our characters are at Skull Rock planning their next move, and they're talking about Vecna, how they're kind of on to how he kills and where he kills from, and Max has a line where she says this:
We just need to sneak into his lair in the Upside Down and drive a stake through his heart.
Well, he gets impaled with a stake through the heart, and Lucas says this:
I say we chop his head off.
And sure enough, he was beheaded. Crazy that we were trying to theorize how Vecna could die all along when the answers were right in front of us in season 4. Now, in this moment, the Mind Flayer's defeated, Vecna's defeated. There's still nearly an hour left in the episode, which is crazy. So something still had to go wrong, right? Unfortunately. Dustin radios to Harbour that everyone's safe and they're ready to ditch this hellscape. Murray sets the bomb and the countdown begins with a Prince needle drop. Now, admittedly, I'm not ashamed to say it, I am not too familiar with Prince's music. I know I'm in my 20s. I'm not as familiar with Prince as I should be. I know some iconic songs. My favorite of his is Let's Go Crazy, but When Doves Cry is the song that started playing and I wasn't terribly familiar with it. We see everyone like all happy go get him, like it's the end of Return of the Jedi and they've just destroyed the second Death Star, but it feels kind of premature. There are some sweet moments here though. Joyce and Will smile at each other, Holly and Nancy share an embrace, even Mike and Derek have a silly little exchange. If you want to get crazy, there might be some lingering Jancy crumbs too. Murray and Harbour drive up next to the truck, and in this moment, I yet again thought Murray was dead. I was really going Mission Impossible 4. If you've seen Ghost Protocol, there's a shot where like the president gets headshot alarmingly in this van and then they go into the water. I was like, Murray's about to get headshot and the freaking Humvee's gonna flip the truck. I was tripping. It didn't happen, but I had convinced myself Murray was a dead man walking. So it seems like it's all sunshine and rainbow. That is until they make it out of the gate. They're greeted by Dr. K and the military, who of course want 11. They've got their kryptonite going, their hedgehogs, I believe they call them, which like disable 11 and her ability to use her powers, but 11's nowhere to be found. She's not in the back of the truck. Where'd she go? Well, she's revealed to be standing in the Upside Down, looking out at everyone from inside the gate, setting the stage for her ultimate sacrifice. Mike's running at her and then he falls into the void, so he's able to have a last-minute conversation with her, a final goodbye, and we montage through their relationship. It gets the waterworks going. It's always been malevolent. Since the first season of the show, these two have been in love, and their journey throughout the seasons has been so sweet to see, and it breaks your heart in the end what ultimately happens, as 11 does make the sacrifice play. As this montage plays, there's a Purple Rain needle drop by Prince. I imagine this is what the Duffers were referring to when they said they had a needle drop that had never been in a television show. And 11 tells Mike, "You understand me better than anyone. You always have from the day we met. You've seen me, the real me." Elle also tells Mike to relay to the others why she made this choice and to thank them for being so kind to her and teaching her what it means to be a friend. And she reiterates that the reason for this decision is that none of this will ever end if she stays alive. She'll always be chased. She'll always be wanted by someone from the government or some military figure. She will never be able to settle and live a normal life. Her final words to Mike are, "I will always be with you. I love you. Goodbye, Mike." As Mike snaps out of the void, all of our characters look on with the explosion, not only obliterating the Upside Down and closing the gate, which ends the connection, but 11 as well. She stays behind and goes down with the ship. Mike's just devastated here, and who isn't? He approaches the remnants of the gate, and it reveals nothing but a broken building, the library. There's no gate, there's no Upside Down, there's no 11. So they fully committed to killing a major character. You have to give him props. Or did they? What do you think? We're going to talk about what I mean in a second. We then time jump to the epilogue as it's 18 months later. That's right. We went from November of 1987 to May of 1989, and our main kids are getting ready to graduate from Hawkins High School. Fleetwood Mac's Landslide plays, another elite needle drop, and Robin is back as Rockin' Robin, at least for a guest stint here in Hawkins. As she begins a broadcast, she informs everyone that there's no soldiers, no fences, no Big Brother cameras. People are happy and smiling and going to the movies. And we got a Last Crusade reference. My Indiana Jones heart was full. Indy's my favorite movie character of all time. My cat's named Indy. I loved every second of that. It's revealed that Steve is a youth baseball coach. Fitting for him. It's one of his occupations, we'll say.
Same time. Go!
And then Robin announces again that all of her friends, the OG party that is, are graduating today. We get a sweet Lou Max reunion. Max is skating at Lucas's house and they share an embrace. Dustin's mom is taking pictures of him in his cap and gown, and he says, "Mom, I'll only be a day's drive away," and she's still in tears. And then we see Will with Joyce and Harbour, with Harbour donning his police chief uniform. That's right, he is back to his old job. Now they all get a call from Cara that no one can find Mike, a reference to Will being missing, but we all know that it's kind of just a joke here. So Harbour goes goes to find Mike at the downtown Hawkins Memorial. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. If you did not know by now, it is fair game to discuss. A long time ago, images released of this scene being filmed, and all I saw, unfortunately, against my will, was Mike and Hopper sitting on a bench. I didn't take a long look at it. I was able to see Hopper with a mustache, wearing what looked like his police chief uniform, and Mike I didn't see much of. But this shot was out there forever, and so we knew they filmed it, and I had no clue the context. I didn't know if this was present day, future. I didn't know if this was time travel. I knew nothing about it, and I did not want to see this. I never really even brought it up on the channel. I didn't want to get into it. It's something that I saw. It was unavoidable. It showed up on my feed. I was like, damn it, I wish I had not seen that. And oftentimes, too, productions will have like fake scene shot to mess with the paparazzi. I was like, maybe this is what it is, but it didn't spoil anything for me. I guess in context now, those two characters survive, and this is an epilogue conversation, but it didn't spoil anything seeing that briefly because I didn't know when the hell it took place or if it was even real, frankly. But obviously, having seen the scene play out, it's an emotional moment. Mike basically tells Hopper what his plans were with 11 and how Mike feels guilty. He blames himself for what 11 did, and Hopper relates to this. This scene, to me, encapsulates Hopper's entire arc, and he's able to sort of lay it all out to Mike. He's like, listen, man, there are two roads you can go down, basically. One where you suffer and push people away because it's what you think you deserve, or the other road where you accept what happened and you live the best life you can. Talks about how he's been down that first road, he doesn't recommend it, and that right there sums up Hopper's arc as a character. So well written. I'm so happy he survived and got that happy ending, and my heart was full. I adore Hopper. Couldn't have asked for a better ending, and I think his best episode in this season by far was this finale. Hopper and Mike having this moment also hits incredibly hard because they're the two characters by far that were closest to 11, and the two characters who will probably be forever impacted by her death and absence in their lives the most. Now, as graduation begins at Hawkins High, we do see some familiar faces in the crowd. You can spot Lucas's parents, Dustin's mom, Steve and Robin chatting it up, Derek and Holly are shown, along with Nancy, who looks much older. Shout out to the hair and makeup department, they crushed it here. Karen is there, and Ted Wheeler lives. He got out of the coma after all. We never really saw him in the hospital. No one really seemed to care, but Ted lives. He's out there. I don't know if killing him would have even made a difference, but here we are. Mike does show up to graduation after all, but he's late. But being there is the most important part. And Karen has a sweet moment with him where she's like, I'm so proud of you and who you've grown up to be. It's a very sweet mother-son moment. And because Dustin Henderson is valedictorian, that means he gets to give a speech. And in the crowd, when he's given that speech, we see Mr. Clark and Murray, the bald eagle Bauman. Good to see Murray's alive and well. Dustin's speech starts off pretty sweet. He's referencing D&D, talking about how when you get to know people who are different from you, you begin to learn more about yourself. You change and grow. It's a beautiful message he's delivering. But you know he wasn't giving the speech without channeling some of that Eddie Munson that's inside of him, as he kind of flips the switch and goes rebellious here, taking off his gown, revealing a Hellfire Live shirt, and he even says, "This is our year," a classic reference to an Eddie Munson line.
This year, it's my year.
He even snatches the diploma from Principal Higgins and flicks him off, just like how Eddie said he always wanted to do when he finally graduated.
I'm gonna flip him the bird. I'm gonna snatch that diploma.
Now, as the celebratory confetti goes off, Mike hears this harsh feedback of the speakers from the mics, and we get a shot of him thinking back to when Elle died. Something is brewing in his head, it's safe to say. As everyone's celebrating graduation, Stacy, who's actually the girl from season 2 at the Snowball who rejected Dustin, walks over to the OG party and invites them to hang out at a party. But Mike tells his friends, I've got a way better idea, and I immediately said, it's gotta be D&D. Now after this, the final scenes with characters begin, where they really do get to ride off into the sunset, have their final sweet moments. The first one is with Jonathan, Steve, Robin, and Nancy on the rooftop of the WSQK radio station. They're all having some beers, reminiscing on life in Hawkins and where they're at now. It's revealed that Steve's a sex ed teacher and a coach. Fitting. Jonathan's at NYU. One of the coolest little callbacks throughout the show is he has always wanted to go there since he was 6 years old.
He's wanted to go to NYU since he was 6 years old!
Nancy Wheeler is revealed to have dropped out of Emerson? Well, she said she was sick of school and wanted to experience the real world. I respect it. And her and Jonathan kind of share a bit of a loving glance. I don't want to read too deep into it, but I could see them ending up together down the line. That's kind of my headcanon. Jancy happens years from now after they've both been apart and grown. And then we get a line that feels like it's pulled straight from Stand By Me in the best ways. Robin says, I really like my new friends. Nancy kind of popcorns off this and says it's not the same. And Jonathan says, I don't think it ever will be. There's just something about that, you know, your childhood friends or those you grew up around, or just life in general when you're in middle school, high school. It's simpler times. And some of those relationships you have with people they're special, they're different, but they might not be lifelong. People grow and change and drift apart, but you all always carry those lifelong memories. There's this sense of optimism in the air about potential hangouts every month, but we all know how those can go. And so it was kind of like a bittersweet moment with everyone here. Like, the idea of getting together frequently with old friends is fun on paper, but then everyone gets busy and sometimes you just don't make time for it. I just thought this was such a realistic, authentic portrayal of this kind of moment, because everyone who's, graduated high school or moved from a place and, you're back in that place with old friends, like, you talk the talk, oh, we're gonna get together, we're gonna hang out, but it doesn't always work out that way. I do believe in my heart of hearts this group means it, though. They do love each other. They are bonded for life by these tragic events and just their experiences in Hawkins, so I think they will make the effort. And Steve, of course, says, to nothing ever keeping us apart, as they all cheer. So I like to imagine they do make an effort to still get together and be present in each other's lives. And that's such a beautiful thing, because it's really hard to do consistently, to show up for old friends who you have drifted apart from. And if you listen, the score playing throughout this scene is identical to the track I Wouldn't Remember Me Either, which is the track that plays out in the woods when Eddie meets up with Chrissy. So in a sense, Eddie Munson's kind of here in spirit, and he finally graduated in my heart.
Or maybe somewhere just more neutral.
I wouldn't remember me either, Chrissy.
Then we finally get to the Enzo's date, or should I say an Enzo's date, because the waiter talking to them kind of makes it seem like they're regulars, and I'm here for that. There's a Cabernet Sauvignon joke, and it's a great season 3 callback to Hopper struggling to pronounce wine. But Hopper tells Joyce, you should be proud of the boys you raised. He goes on to talk about how he got a call from Montauk and they're looking for a new chief of police. Now, Montauk was actually going to be the original name of Stranger Things. That's the original concept that Evers put together for the show, Montauk. So this Easter egg being in the finale, super fitting, cool, and I feel like a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. So if you're just now finding that out, let me know in the comments. But Montauk's in New York State, known for its beaches, so when they move there, which it seems like they are, they really will be getting a fresh start away from Hawkins, as Hopper himself says, hey, there's nothing tying us down here anymore. And Hopper makes this damn thing official as he proposes to Joyce. And I gotta say it again, one last time here, Jopper Nation, rise. Now, the ring he proposes with looks exactly like the ring that Jonathan was going to propose to Nancy with. So maybe Jonathan found it and picked it up after he threw it in Hawkins' lab, or a lot of the rings just looked similar in that time period. It could just be the same ring, though, and Jonathan saved it for Hopper. In the final moments with Joyce and Hopper in Stranger Things, or of the two of them dancing in Enzo's, couldn't have asked for a better ending. We then see the sprinklers going in the front yard of the Wheeler house. This, of course, paralleling the first time we saw the Wheeler house in season 1, Ep 1, as the OG party plus Max are all playing D&D in the Wheeler basement. Now, for as long as I can remember, here on the channel, I've said I wanted the final scene of this show to be the kids playing D&D, and they delivered on this. I made a video forever ago talking about how I wanted this, and here it is. Beautiful thing to see. I said it'd be the perfect ending, and sure enough, it was. They're all having a blast one last time, getting super invested, to the point of Dustin even letting out one of his signature bada bada booms at one point. I was like, hell yeah, I'd love to hear that again. But they're just having fun, being kids one last time. Very Toy Story 3 with Andy having one last play with all the toys before passing them on to Bonnie, and it got me good. Now, as the campaign does end, Max questions the ending regarding comfort and happiness, to which Mike responds with some wise words talking about the paths that these characters are going to go on. He talks about the Knight in the Zoomer, aka Lumax, retiring from battle and settling down in a small village. With each passing day, their love grows stronger, and we see that Lumax movie date finally. It's something that us fans have been clamoring for forever. Finally got it. The Bard, aka Dustin, craves knowledge and spends his days in Vast Library, where we see Dustin studying and gearing up for a trip with Steve, his best friend. Fun fact about this shot, they actually filmed it at Oglethorpe University in Brookhaven, Georgia, and I've driven by there many times in my life and been on the campus before. With Will the Wise, he travels far and long to a new city where he finds his place along with deep happiness and acceptance. And as for Mike, he keeps telling stories about his friends as a writer, and he hopes his tales will spread far and wide across the land. But he says there's only one story he can never tell. As we see Mike typing in his room, you can actually spot Will's painting from season 4 on the wall, along with a WSQK sticker. But the story he can't tell is the story of the Mage, aka 11. At least not the real story, he says. sense. Mike then goes on to tell a story that the night 11 died, Kali actually projected that 11 was in the gate and hid her from all the others, making it appear as though 11 died with the upside down, but in reality, she escaped from the truck and hid away where no one could find her. He says the mage they saw die was not real, but rather an illusion. Mike says no one will ever know where she went, but he likes to imagine that she's in a beautiful land somewhere far away. We then see 11 in a small town with a waterfall, and she at last finds peace and happiness, Mike says, but none of them know if it's actually definitively true, which I kind of like. They leave some ambiguity to it, right? The audience can decide if 11 lived or died. What do you think? Do you think 11's alive? Do you think she's dead? What are you choosing to believe? Because all of our characters say one by one, I believe. It felt very Polar Express. It's kind of like Inception. You pick your ending. Is he in a dream or reality as the credits roll? I've kind of gone back and forth on where I stand depending on my mood, but I would like to believe as well. I would like to believe that 11 is out there living out her days peacefully because she didn't deserve death, and maybe she can finally settle down. But if you take a step back, it's poetic because them choosing to believe is them also holding on to that childlike innocence and wistful nature of the world. They're holding on to that magic, and they're not letting the spark of imagination in their lives fizzle out just because they're getting older. They're all dreamers, they're all friends, they're all heroes. It's truly a compelling final monologue from Mike that gives me chills and wraps up the show wonderfully. And I imagine it'll inspire generations to come. And what's really chilling is the show plays the slowed down version of Kids, which is like the iconic track from Stranger Things. It's this slowed down version of it that really will get you in the feels. Now, as Karen calls down that dinner's getting cold, each character one by one gets up and puts their handbooks or manuals up for what we could view as one last time. This could be the last time they ever get together to play D&D for the foreseeable future. First, we see Max, then Lucas, then Dustin, then Will, and finally Mike. And this hit like a brick wall because not only is this the characters themselves saying goodbye to D&D, but in a way, they're saying goodbye to their childhood. Them all walking up the stairs and out of that door can signify their transition from childhood to adulthood, and they have now come of age because of the journey they experienced in this show that we all watched. As Mike is the last one walking up the stairs, Holly and all of her friends run down the stairs, and they are like, what's D&D? They're trying to figure out how to play it. And in this moment, it truly did become a passing of the torch. From Mike to Holly, the legacy lives on. It was beautiful because I took it to mean there will always be another party, there will always be another adventure. And it hits even harder knowing these actors grew up on the show, so in real life, they're feeling the emotions of saying goodbye to their childhood, in addition to their characters also saying farewell. But they're saying goodbye to a show they spent their whole lives on up to this point, essentially. Mike looks on proudly at Holly as he knows this is the end of his adventure and his childhood in a sense, but he'll always have the stories to tell. As he walks up the stairs and closes the door, he closes the door on childhood and the show as a whole. And just like at the end of season 3 when Joyce closes the door of the Byers house after they move out, that's closing the door to one chapter of life, just like how Mike has closed the basement door, ending this 5-season run. It's a perfect final shot. And as the credits begin to roll, we get hit with a real treat as Heroes plays, but it's not the Peter Gabriel rendition this time, it is the David Bowie version. We've heard Heroes in the past in season 1 episode 3 when Will's fake body is found. And then again we hear it in the season 3 finale as the season ends. But those were the Peter Gabriel renditions. This version is more upbeat, uplifting, inspiring. Makes you feel good inside and reflective, thinking about your own life, your own friendships, and of course the message we can be heroes just for one day resonates hard. It was really cool to me that we got a special movie-style end credits, not only because the episode was playing in theaters, but because this is the finale to end it all. The credits sort of play through highlights of all 5 seasons with different images. And to end it all, we got a Stranger Things themed D&D player's manual. I would love to get that framed on my wall. It just seems like it'd be a really cool poster to have. But it was such a fitting final shot. I interpret it as Stranger Things sort of saying thank you to D&D for inspiring so much of the lore and the references in the show. It's just a really cool nod to that game that was played constantly and referenced constantly in Stranger Things. Does anyone out there take this to mean that Mike created a D&D campaign based around his adventures with his friends, but no one ever actually knew it was real? Or do you view this as the Stranger Things series as a whole being a D&D campaign in someone else's world? That's getting a bit crazy with it, but it's fun to theorize, right? But that does it for Stranger Things as we know it. Season 5 in the books. That is my breakdown / ending explained for the final episode of the show, the season 5 finale, The Right Side Up. It was one incredible journey, almost a decade long. I watched the show from the month it came out to the month it ended. It was all-time stuff, and forever will probably be my #1 favorite show ever. Piece of media. It's moved me. I met so many awesome people through it, and this community has grown because we all love this show, and I can't thank you all enough truly for coming along this journey with me, but this is by no means the end. I talk all sorts of movies and shows. I have before Stranger Things, I will after Stranger Things, and there's lots of content to come, obviously in the world of Stranger Things, covering spin-offs and more Season 5 videos galore all throughout January and the rest of the year, but there's tons of other stuff as well, so I implore you to stick around and check out some of my other videos if you have never seen a non-Stranger Things video on the channel, because I do make lots of other videos as well, including breakdowns, reactions, rankings, all that good stuff. But what do you guys think of the Stranger Things Season 5 finale? What is your breakdown? What is your take on the ending? I want to hear it all in the comments down below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you on the other side of the Upside Down.